Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated. I am BC Adebayo. Coming up on the program, African nations close borders, cancel flights to contain coronavirus spread. In Kenya to limit cash transactions to curb the spread of COVID-19. Plus South Africa to finalize comprehensive intervention package for COVID-19. Well, let's begin the show with intraday market numbers. And here in Africa, most of the markets closed negative except for the index in Nigeria, which was marginally higher by 0.01%. And that was as at intraday. In South Africa, the JSE was the heaviest hit as the index shaved off 10.66%. The EGX 30 in Egypt shed 7.96%, and Kenya closed negative on Friday. And in the Middle East, most Gulf markets were negative at intraday, with the Abu Dhabi index taking the heaviest hit, down 7.83%. Dubai's index is next in the trail of losses as that market shed 6.15%. In Saudi Arabia, the index lost 3.1%, while the Qatari index was the only gainer by 1.45%. Well, let's turn now to the UK, where the FTSE 100 share index fell more than 7% in early trade. Well, let's get an update on this and more from Juliana Olayinka, who's standing by from our London studio. Good afternoon, Juliana. Well, bring us up to speed with the intraday numbers. Are the markets still in the red, or has anything changed?
Well, they're still very much in the red, Bissy, but there has been some sort of gains from early morning to intraday. At intraday, the all share is down 7.47%. The FTSE 100 also down 6.45%, and the FTSE 250 is down by 11.73%. In currencies, the pound is down on the US dollar by 0.01%, down on the euro by 0.499%, and down on the Japanese yen by 1.69%. Of course, airline stocks are well into the red. They've been like that for the past couple of weeks. Gambling stocks are also doing pretty bad, especially now that the Premier League and all elite football in England is cancelled, and so people are not gambling as much as they used to. About £500 million has been wiped off their shares. And also the future of DIY retailer Kingfisher is in doubt. They lost about 20% of their market value, having to shut their stores in France and Spain. So it's not looking great. Red still is the colour of the FTSE in London.
Some British airlines, notably Virgin Atlantic, are calling for a government bailout. Of course, others, including British Airways, are not, at least not so far. But do you see this happening eventually?
Oh, absolutely. That certainly will happen, Bissy. This is being called the bloodiest week in aviation history. Some are even calling it worse than the September 11th, 2001 terror attacks. And for those of us who are old enough, we know just how badly that affected the aviation industry. BA's chief executive over the weekend did write to their 45,000 strong staff, and they did say that redundancies can be expected almost effective immediately, particularly, of course, after US President Donald Trump cancelled all flights between Britain and Ireland, which started at 4 GMT just a few hours ago. This is wreaking havoc on the aviation industry. Also, as well, over the weekend, Virgin Atlantic's boss, Virgin Atlantic is owned by the billionaire Brit Richard Branson. They said the government must act quickly if they don't want the aviation industry to suffer to a point of no return, and they need a bailout for about £7.5 billion. So we're talking huge numbers here, and a lot of British aviation airlines are saying they may not be able to recover, and staff will, if not just have to go unpaid, then they will face getting the axe. And this will affect EasyJet, which is a budget airline, as well as Ryanair, as well as, of course, the other big ones. Now, Andrew Bailey, he is the Bank of England, the new Bank of England governor. He just started his job today. today. I know that he has been in and out of meetings with Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And just before I came into the studio, I did hear very briefly in a statement that there will be some bailout measures being taken to try and save the aviation industry, because, of course, the British government do not want another Flybe on their hands. And Flybe was Europe's largest regional airline, which, of course, went under a couple of weeks ago. And they said that was because of the strain of the cancellation of flights during COVID-19.
That's certainly not good news at all. But John Lewis has moved 500 members of staff over to Waitrose, and that's to help the business cope with a huge demand from shoppers stocking up on food and staple household items. Do you see a lockdown soon in the UK?
Gosh, to be honest with you, Bissy, it is a billion-dollar question, a question that's probably left for the scientists. But I've got to say, here in the UK, that is a question that Boris Johnson is increasingly being put under pressure to answer. We've seen now that COVID-19, the epicenter of COVID-19, has shifted away from China. It's very deeply in the heart of Europe. There are almost 2,000 deaths. Just last night alone, there were 369 deaths in Italy, and the death toll in France and Spain is rising. What we do know is that UK are much further behind than that, but all of our European counterparts, well, most of them, the majority of them, have shut down their borders. Not only have they shut down their borders, they've shut down schools and they've shut down restaurants. Britain are not doing that yet. They say they're sticking to the scientific advice. The scientific advice is not showing them that social distancing measures do actually work. Of course, with us, we're relying on the NHS, and the NHS is always under intense pressure, whether or not there's COVID-19, particularly in the autumn, in the winter, in the colder months, and we're just coming out of that season. So a lot of the scientific advice is that, they want to try and suppress this. So asking people to stay at home if there's a cough, asking now family members to stay at home with the family member that's got a cough. They say that this will try and stretch out the spread of the coronavirus to at least summer, when the NHS can better cope. Who knows? We know that now Boris Johnson will be giving daily briefings to the public with his chief medical advisor and the chief scientific advisor. So for now, we don't know whether or not London and the United Kingdom will be locked down. But I can tell you, Bissy, having travelled into work and being right in the heart and centre of central London at the moment, we're almost unofficially in a lockdown, because most people, if they can, are working from home. And as I said earlier, if you have a cough or are showing any symptoms, most people are working from home too. But who knows? This time tomorrow when I talk to you, it may be from Skype in my living room.
Well, we'll see how that goes. But if you do have to go to work, just make sure you stay safe. We'll see you again tomorrow, Juliana.
Thank you, Bissy.
Well, things are not any different in Europe now. The markets plunged today as much after the region went into shutdown mode to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus. The pan-European stock 600 dropped 8% near the start of trading. Travel and leisure stocks plummeted 14.3%, leading losses as all sectors and major bourses slid into the red at this point. Let's bring in my colleague at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, Chelsea Delany, to tell us more about this. Good afternoon, Chelsea. Well, global stocks fell again today, even after central banks in the US, Japan and New Zealand stepped in with emergency measures to help support the markets. Well, how are the markets trading in Europe?
It is another absolutely brutal day for stocks here in Frankfurt. The DAX opened lower and it's just been falling ever since. It just passed the 10% down mark and shows really no sign of stopping. Over the weekend, there were a lot of headlines signifying increasing restrictions on public life here in Europe, including here in Germany, where bars and clubs in Berlin have been closed, where schools have been closed, and now Germany is also shutting its borders to a lot of other countries in Europe. So it's becoming increasingly draconian, the measures governments are taking. And investors had been quite hopeful up until the past few days that measures by central banks, measures by governments would really help offset the economic impact. But we saw overnight the Federal Reserve in the United States, the Bank of Japan, come out with really billions of dollars in support for markets, and that's just really not helping at all. So I think investors are increasingly worried about the economic impact.
The airline research group has estimated that a majority of airlines could go bankrupt by May, and that's if governments don't step in to support them now. What have the European airlines said about how they're managing the outbreak?
Well, airlines are really saying that this could be an existential threat to the industry. What we're seeing from airlines is just really drastic measures that they're having to take to prepare their business for these declines. We've seen Lufthansa here in Germany, Air France, KLM, all sorts of airlines are having to cut their capacity by about 70%. And also they're having to lay staff off. They're having to sell planes so they can stay liquid. This is going to put a lot of pressure on governments to help bail them out. A lot of airlines won't survive this if they don't get help from the government. But at this point, we're still seeing more restrictions coming. So the worst seems really yet to come for the industry.
Of course, Chelsea, reports over the weekend suggested that the U.S. tried to poach a German pharmaceutical company working on a coronavirus vaccine. But how have German officials responded to this?
German officials have been quite upset about this report. This came out overnight from a variety of news sources. The company at the heart of it, CureVac, has said that they're not going to comment on the reports yet. But essentially, it looks like the United States had offered about $1 billion to buy the vaccine that this firm in Germany is working on that could be ready by the summer as a vaccine for coronavirus. There had been a lot of concern that the U.S. was trying to sort of keep this virus for themselves. Germany has come out and said that for one, that Germany is not for sale, that this vaccine is not for sale. But they also have said that they could make a similar offer for the vaccine, but they also want it to be used and available outside of Germany. But this is also going to be a discussion today during the coronavirus emergency response with Chancellor Merkel here in Germany. So I think we'll hear more about that later in the day.
Well, fingers crossed, I would like to hear. I'm sure that you'll bring us updates tomorrow. Many thanks, Chelsea, and do enjoy the rest of your day. Well, let's turn now to Asia, where stocks tumbled today as the U.S. Federal Reserve slashed its benchmark interest rate to zero and launched a massive quantitative easing program in an emergency move on Sunday. The ASX 200 in Australia led losses among the region's major markets as it dropped 9.7%, closing at 5,002. Mainland Chinese stocks dropped also as well, with the Shanghai Composite 3.4% lower at about 2,789.25, while the Shenzhen Composite slipped 4.83% to approximately 1,712.02. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also fell 4.38% as at its final hour of trading. In Japan, though, the Nikkei 225 closed 2.46% lower at 17,002.04, and the Topix Index was also 2.01% lower, finishing at 1,236.34. South Korea's Kospi slipped 3.19%, and the MSCI Asia ex-Japan Index declined 4.99%. It's the same story in the U.S. The stock futures were down sharply today, even after the Federal Reserve embarked on a massive monetary stimulus campaign to curb slower economic growth amid the COVID-19 outbreak. Stock market futures hit limit down levels of 5% lower, a move made by the CME Futures Exchange to reduce panic in markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average futures were off by more than 1,000 points, triggering the limit down level, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq 100 futures were also at their downside limits. This led traders to look at the SPDR S&P 500 ETF Trust for a better indication of how the market will open. Of course, oil prices also stayed more than 6% today as the acceleration in the coronavirus cases worldwide, which is bringing travel and business to a standstill, further dented global demand for crude. International benchmark Brent fell 8.5% to $30.64 a barrel, while U.S. crude futures also dropped 6.4%, trading at $29.67 a barrel. Oil continues to be hit on both the demand and the supply side. The coronavirus outbreak has led to softer demand for crude as people cut back on travel. The move lower comes even after President Donald Trump said on Friday that the Department of Energy would purchase crude oil for the SPR in a bid to prop up prices. When we return in just a moment, we'll be looking at the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on Africa. Do stay with us.